Everything you want is on the other side of comfortable, but you're scrolling for the third hour straight, hitting snooze for the fifth time, choosing easy over everything. When did comfort become a trap? Today we're diving into why your brain craves the easy path and what happens when you finally decide to get uncomfortable on purpose. So the couch is comfortable, the warm shower feels good, scrolling endlessly is easy, and generally speaking, comfort is safe, but what if it's actually a trap?
You know, I gotta say, Josh, I didn't look at my notes until just now.
I figured.
I feel like you've trapped me in something here.
Really?
I feel like just as I was setting things up, I felt like we were just, as I was looking at this, I'm like, yeah. This is Josh's indirect way of telling me to stop being comfortable.
Well, no. Comfort isn't bad, but sometimes when it comes to a goal or something you want to achieve or to move forward in life, it can kind of quietly erode away our growth and resilience if we're only focuses on comfort.
Yeah.
And we've kind of talked about it a lot previously and touched on it now and then, that we're kind of a society that craves, or not craves, but pursues comfort above all else, it seems.
Seems like we always follow the path of least resistance.
Yeah. It's kind of when you talk to a lot of people and they're like, what's their, they'll tell you, I just want a day where I can sit and do nothing. And that's not a bad thing.
Right.
But I think there's kind of been this expectation or this idea that we've achieved something if we're not doing anything. And I'm all for certainly rest and everything, but I think if we have this constant pursuit of comfort at the expense of all else, then we're kind of not giving ourselves the best chance to really be successful in whatever we're trying to pursue in life. So you can't have 100% comfort all the time. And I think if that's the expectation, we're going to be disappointed with the results.
This might be getting into the weeds a little bit too deeply, too quickly, but do you think like comfort should be should be seen as more of a reward than the norm?
No, I just think something,
or is that too extreme?
Comfort is it's just something that we have some of the time. We don't have it all the time.
Yeah.
You know, I think, sure, comfort is a reward. Going on a vacation may be a reward.
Not the lead up to vacation,
hard.
though.
Actually, the research shows that the lead up to vacation is actually more beneficial than the actual vacation itself.
Okay, why is that? I feel like this is a little bit of a side
because
detour.
it's the anticipation of it. The anticipation of the vacation actually has more rewards associated with it, as far as the release of the feel-good hormones, you know, the mental health piece. They find that there's more benefits to the lead up to a vacation rather than the actual vacation itself.
You know, I guess I can kind of see that. You have that excitement, the anticipation, you have that extra focus.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm definitely more productive at work because I got to make sure I get these deadlines done before the long weekend.
And it's probably related to more of the compound interest over time, so to speak. So there's more time in which you are experiencing the lead up to the vacation than the actual vacation itself.
Sure.
You know, but anyway, to kind of get back to what we're talking about the comfort trap. And the reason I like to call it a trap is because the idea of pursuing comfort and being in a state of being comfortable, it's very easy to enter, but it's very hard to leave. And so that's why it's kind of a trap. It entices you in, but it's very difficult to leave. And so it can kind of comfort can create this false sense of security that, one, limits growth, kind of like a padded cell. You know, think of the padded cell analogy.
Yep.
It sure is soft and comfortable in a padded cell, quite frankly. You know, you can't
hurt yourself in that thing.
You can lean up against the wall, and it's comfortable to lean against the wall. You can lay on the ground. The ground is soft, so it's comfortable. The padded cell is comfortable, but it's also confining and very limiting. In the same way, pursuing comfort all the time in our lives is comfortable, right? But it can be confining. In other words, it can be very limiting in our lives. So if our only pursuit is comfort, it can be very limiting. And we kind of see this for people that, for example, live for the weekend. You know, they work through drudgery all week, only to look forward to the 2 days on the over the weekend where they can kick back and relax. And that,
Right.
again, that's not a bad thing. But if the only thing we're living for, our only sense of purpose is to find comfort in our lives, then we're going to be disappointed, because frankly, most of the time in our lives, it's not comfortable all the time.
Right.
Right. And if we're comfortable all the time, it also means we're probably not working towards something. So again, comfort kind of creates that false sense of security that slowly limits our growth and kind of prevents us from achieving goals over time. Now, again, I don't want to. I want to belabor the point that there's a difference between healthy rest, which is part of recovery, versus comfort-seeking avoidance. Healthy rest is necessary for recovery, whereas comfort-seeking avoidance is more of an escape. So you kind of see the difference. It's one thing to work really hard Monday through Friday and then take a breather on Saturday and Sunday because of all the hard work you put in. That's healthy. Whereas the other piece is you do the bare minimum at work just so you can go home and watch Netflix all night. That's more of an escapism because you don't want to face what you're dealing with in life, or you don't want to put in the time to achieve your goals. And so that's kind of the difference between that healthy rest and the comfort-seeking avoidance. Very high-achieving athletes, for example, this weekend the NFL is opening up. You see some of the best athletes on the field this weekend, whether it's in the NFL or in college. And they are constantly pushing themselves to be the best that they can be. And they're constantly putting themselves in uncomfortable situations, whether it's through their training, whether through their nutrition, those kinds of things, so that they can perform at a high level when game day comes. But every elite athlete will tell you that a core part of their training regimen is rest and recovery. And so we all need rest and we all need recovery. And I'm sure those times are comfortable for them, but it's kind of the mindset that's different. Is they're resting to recover rather than resting to avoid or seeking comfort to avoid.
It's part of the plan.
Escape. Yeah.
It's part of the plan.
Yep.
And
it's a mentality too.
Yeah.
They're resting so that way they can get back at it. They're not resting to avoid discomfort. So there's this kind of psychology behind why we tend to seek comfort in general. For example, the brain has a natural bias towards what's called energy conservation. So it's going to do whatever it can to preserve the energy that our bodies hold. And the reason for that is our brain is designed to keep us alive. And so it's going to do whatever it can to conserve energy to be as efficient as possible. That's why comfort feels good. It feels good because it signals safety. And so that's why we really gravitate towards being comfortable all the time, is because our brains equate the comfort with being safe. And because of that, we tend to move towards it. But then you compound that problem with avoidance behavior. So we all have issues with procrastination, for example. Those kinds of behaviors reinforce short-term relief, but they fuel long-term discomfort. What do I mean by that?
Yeah.
We have all these behaviors that we tend to participate in. Not all of us, but just generally speaking, human beings have this set of what I call avoidance behaviors that they use in place of something else. So let's take procrastination, for example. Rather than working on the project that's due at work, that's off in the distance, the deadline's coming due, they procrastinate on a bunch of smaller tasks because doing the deep work is more challenging, not as comfortable. But the brain uses procrastination to avoid the discomfort of working on something more difficult.
You think the brain would figure out that, hey, even though I'm procrastinating, I still got to do it anyways?
Yeah. Well, that's not how the brain operates. Our primitive brain tends to operate on the here and now, not on the future tense, right?
That's for the rational brain, right?
Exactly.
Is that right? No.
Well, the rational brain is the kind of we're pointing to as our executive functioning. So our rational brain knows what it should be doing, but it's kind of at war, you might say, with our primal part of our brain,
right,
or more primitive part of our brain that seeks out comfort and safety.
Right. Sure.
So there's procrastinations and avoidance behavior. Other things feeding into the psychology of comfort is this idea of a numbing behavior, and a numbing behavior can be any number of things. You know, the ones that rise to the top that we all think of perhaps are maybe overindulging on alcohol, for example. That's a numbing behavior.
Mm-hmm.
But those kinds of numbing behaviors, they exist because they actually work. They provide short-term relief at the expense of long-term gain, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So they another way to look at it is they provide temporary relief, but they fuel long-term discomfort because we never really go anywhere in life if we allow those things to kind of take over.
Sure.
Overeating, it can also be an avoidance behavior. You know, some people that I've worked with report that comfort eating can also provide that sense of numbing, or can replace the anxiety or the stress or the nervousness that they feel related to something that they're working on.
I'm definitely guilty of that. Not that I'm working or stressed out about anything. I don't think. I just find myself more often than not peeking out before I go to bed. Sometimes it's just some cauliflower, but probably most of the time it's like ramen noodles or something that you absolutely should not be eating before bed. I mean, if you're eating something just straight up protein, you're probably fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not with the garbage, not with the trash.
But like, for example, to pick on you because you brought it up. Yeah. You enjoy noodles, generally speaking.
Oh my gosh,
I've always known that about you.
Noodles.
So any kind of noodles. You used to get those street noodles you would get for the office a long time ago.
Oh my gosh, that was good. So good.
I haven't seen those in a long time, but but it doesn't necessarily mean anything's wrong at that time, but your body seeks comfort. That's why it doesn't crave a piece of bland chicken. It craves the comfort that's associated with the ramen noodles, because it tastes good. When something tastes good, it triggers the satiation chemicals in our brain. So there's a reason why there's that connection between something that tastes good and comfort.
Yeah.
So I would say that's kind of
gotta have
kind of an avoidance
sodium.
behavior. Well, we all gotta have sodium, just not too much. So the paradox here, though, is that chasing comfort often makes life actually more uncomfortable in the long term for a number of reasons. Seeking comfort may result in missed opportunities. So rather than going and networking with people to build connections, because it makes us uncomfortable, we avoid that and go home and read a book or watch Netflix instead. That could result in a missed opportunity, for example.
Yeah.
Actually, chasing comfort for a lot of people actually triggers anxiety, which is seems really strange because your body is seeking comfort because it's safe, but because it sought that safety, therefore it is now anxious. And the reason for that is your brain also keeps track of the things it knows you're supposed to be doing. And when you don't do them, your brain will remind you of them, which then causes anxiety because all this work perhaps is piling up. Or you should be doing something else. Or you avoided networking or whatever else. Or you stood up your friends because you're not comfortable in social settings and you feel bad about that. So any number of things, even though we seek comfort, the actual seeking comfort and participating in that comfort activity can actually cause anxiety.
Okay.
And then the number one thing chasing comfort can cause is the sense of regret. It's not uncommon to talk to people, particularly when they're in middle to late stages, they don't talk necessarily about all they've accomplished. What they'll always focus in on, if you let them, is regret over not having done certain things. And we all do that, but obviously the pain of regret is much greater than the pain in the moment we'd experience if we actually worked on what we were trying to accomplish.
Side note, who do you think is the most likely person in the world today to be at their deathbed and say, I have no regrets?
Who is the most likely person to say?
Yeah. I mean, I know everyone has.
Oh, geez.
Everyone, who's the most accomplished person that you can think of? There's so many.
The most accomplished person that I can think of. You kind of got me stumped. You must have some on your mind, though.
Well, I guess one thing that I always think of is when I think of like adventure, I always think of people like Tom Cruise. Like he does all of his own stunts. He's what, like in his 60s now? He looks like he's in his 40s, like you and I. Yeah. And this guy, he jumps off of cliffs. He's on top of the Burj Khalifa, with the tallest building in the world in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Did he actually do that?
He did.
Did he?
Oh yeah. So did Will Smith a few years
In
ago.
the last Mission Impossible movie, I highly doubt he actually jumped a dirt bike off a cliff and skydove. I don't think he did.
He did.
I don't think so.
I have a video. I can show you a video of it. He did.
Okay.
I'm not joking you. He literally did that like 4 or 5 times.
All right. Well, good for him. I would totally do it.
Yeah.
I would totally do it.
It's like he just there's no. I'm sure he has fear, but he just does it anyways. I just think, I always admire that about him. That he just seizes the moment. And,
Yep.
Well, if I die, okay.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's my time. Well,
Yeah.
that's probably a dangerous way to live life, but regardless. So can you think of any examples of a comfort trap? You know, we've kind of been talking about what comfort is, but what would be kind of a comfort trap that you can think of without looking at your notes? So I know you just looked at them.
I didn't see that part.
Oh, okay.
I was trying to catch up. Comfort trap. Well, Netflix. Is that what like?
Well, let me kind of like what somebody that let's kind of think about what does somebody that's prioritizing comfort over other things. What might they do, or where might they stay, or how might they conduct life that keeps them stuck? I'll start with an example.
Yeah.
Some people may maintain a relationship out of convenience rather than connection.
Because they're comfortable being uncomfortable with that.
And
in a bad way.
Therapists deal with this a lot, particularly when in individual therapy, for example, or couples counseling. Is what they find is that people tend to stay in a relationship not because they know it, for example, that it may be unhealthy, that it may not be fulfilling, but they continue to stay. They don't want to leave. Well, why is that? It's because it's more convenient to stay than it is to step out of their comfort zone and do something that they're maybe scared of or have high anxiety over, which is meet new people or make the decision to end the relationship. They don't do that because they're trapped in that comfort. It's easier to stay in something that's not fulfilling because it's become comfortable to them.
Because what if I don't find somebody else?
Right. Or even more so than that, just the idea of going through the work to put yourself out there to be vulnerable to somebody else again, somebody new, is too difficult or too anxiety provoking, so they may stay. Another example is perhaps staying in a job that drains someone because it feels safe. So this may be somebody that's actually very successful in their career, but it's not necessarily fulfilling, and it's actually quite draining, but they feel like they have to stay there to keep it safe. I think of our late uncle, who had a job for a long time that he was very unhappy with, but he kept it because it was safe and it was predictable. And he was someone who was very smart, but he just couldn't get out of that rut of, well, I got to stay here because it's comfortable, it's predictable, and I've built a life around this.
It's paying the bills.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep. But to your point, habits of distraction are a big one. And I struggle with this a lot too. It's very, things like Netflix, food, social media are kind of the top 3 from my perspective. Habits of distraction. The challenge with streaming services is they're super convenient, but they've also just set us up for this chronic distraction. Same thing with social media, same thing with food. We're blessed to live in a society where food and comforts like that are absolutely abundant, and in fact they're overwhelming. Most of us, regardless of our place in life or level of socioeconomic success, are able to kind of construct a life around us that's very comfortable with these things. And those habits keep us from doing deeper work. So rather than going home and working on that hobby, that you really enjoy, but actually may be difficult, and uncomfortable for you, rather than do that, well, I'm just going to sit and watch a show on Netflix.
Right.
And again, that's not to say Netflix is not bad. I have Netflix. I watch it fairly often. Those things aren't bad. It's just as long as they're kept in the proper context, in the right compartment in our lives,
If they're used in moderation.
Yeah, and if they're used to the exclusion of all else, because we're trying to avoid doing difficult things, that's when they become unhealthy.
Yeah.
And that's where it becomes a comfort trap. But even smaller, if you drill down smaller than that, there's these different micro traps that I call. How often have you hit the snooze button in the morning?
I hit the snooze button every day, one time, every day.
Yep. So that I would call that a comfort level,
Yeah.
a comfort trap.
Yep.
Why are you pressing that snooze button?
So I have that one more wink.
It's not going to make you feel any more or less rested sleeping that extra. I think it's 10 minutes is standard on snooze, right?
Yeah, it's 10 minutes.
That extra 10 minutes of sleep, believe it or not, is not going to make you feel any more rested.
I actually feel worse.
Right? Yeah, it's completely a comfort thing.
Yep.
Right? Hitting the snooze button is a comfort. And again, I'm not knocking people that hit the snooze button, but I'm just trying to open our eyes a little bit to think about, why do we do these things?
I had a not to go off again, but when I was living at home, with our parents, I had a runaway alarm clock that had wheels on it. It would just run away whenever it went off. I thought that for sure would help me. You know what I did? I just put it on its end.
Yep.
Like, it's not going to stop me.
Yep.
It's just going to tick me off, and then I'll go back to sleep out of spite.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Another micro trap is skipping a workout. Again, not to say you can't skip a workout for whatever reason, but if exercise is important to you and you have goals to meet, skipping workouts compounds itself over time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can be a comfort trap for whatever reason. I was a big micro trap that we all have a propensity to engage in is avoiding difficult conversations.
Yeah.
We tend to avoid those like the plague because we don't like conflict, and it feels uncomfortable and not enjoyable. But to avoid those is an example of a comfort trap.
Right.
So then the question is, what does escaping from that trap, what does it actually look like? So we can identify that maybe we participate in some of these things. But how do we break that cycle? Sorry, I'm distracted myself because I notice my collar is off. Anyway, how do we distract ourselves, or how do we stop ourselves or stop that cycle of the comfort track? Well, the first thing to remember is that short-term discomfort results in long-term growth.
Mm-hmm.
We all know the phrase, anything worth doing doesn't happen overnight, however it goes. But it's kind of like developing that ability to engage in discomfort is kind of like muscles growing through resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Any person that works out would tell you that loves working out actually is lying to you. I don't think anybody likes working out. The actual motion, the actual task of doing the thing is not enjoyable. It's painful. You're either out of breath, something hurts, something doesn't feel good about working out no matter how you go about doing it. But it's that process that you go through that develops growth over time. And the other challenging thing about those that like working out is you don't notice a change the first time you do it.
Sure.
It's a compound interest thing. So over time, you'll notice it.
You don't see it for months usually.
Exactly. Yep. So escaping the comfort trap requires some psychological flexibility. And that just means learning to tolerate the discomfort without the panic. You know how some people have, I call them heat panics. They get so hot from the weather outside that they can't handle it. They panic and they have to seek comfort from the shade.
Making themselves even hotter in the process.
And what we know, I went to Washington, D.C. early this year, and I thought I experienced humidity, but I've never experienced humidity like that before. We landed, it was 100 degrees outside in Washington, D.C., and the heat index was 110 to 115.
Oh.
There was no breeze, full sun, so people were sweating up a storm, and there was no cooling mechanism whatsoever.
Oh.
Well, anyway, our dad was with us, and he had a very difficult time. Like, he panics when he's in the excessive heat because he can't get any relief.
Right.
Somebody that's lived in that environment for a long period of time, they're very used to it, and they've exercised that muscle of being in that kind of extreme weather condition.
Sure.
And so they've developed that flexibility to be able to tolerate it. But it's the same way in our lives. If we don't, we have to be able to learn to tolerate some discomfort without panicking or without immediately seeking to make it go away.
Sure. Yeah.
In order to escape that seeking of comfort all the time, we have to be able to tolerate and to be able to live with some level of discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, frankly, that's where a lot of us struggle, is to be okay with not being fully okay in any one moment, at any given moment.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is life is not going to go the way we want it to most of the time. And to expect that it will is in my opinion setting us up for failure when you think about it.
And things like it's been talked to death, but things like social media can push that further because
Sure.
everyone else looks like they're so comfortable and having fun, and we all know that that's not the case.
Right.
We all know that's mostly highlight reels.
Yeah. Yeah. So then so the whole key with being able to tolerate discomfort is building resilience. And if we don't intentionally build resilience, we're never going to be resilient people.
Mm-hmm.
So resilience is then built by choosing our challenges intentionally. For example, if you want to achieve something, maybe you have to learn about it. But to learn about it, requires you to voluntarily engage in the learning process, right?
Right.
Or public speaking. If you want to get better at public speaking, you want your fear of public speaking to go away, what do you got to do? You got to go speak in front of people in some way, shape, or form. You don't just overnight, you don't just develop
Right.
to be an expert public speaker.
Right.
Or by choosing the challenge of having a difficult conversation. You're not going to suddenly wake up one day and be comfortable having uncomfortable conversations. You have to seek them out, so to speak, and
Right.
be willing to engage.
That
in
first one was so hard. Oh my gosh.
It's always hard. Yeah. Yep. The other thing that feeds the comfort trap, or seeking a life of comfort, is we have this misconception about it. We tend to equate comfort with happiness. And that's really where I think we have the problem. I think the real root of the problem is that we assume that having a life of comfort equals a life of happiness, which simply isn't true.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is that comfort actually dulls our happiness over time, because we're essentially, if all we're doing is living a life of comfort or seeking comfort, what we find is that our lives aren't very fulfilling. Just think
Yeah.
and I was actually talking over lunch with someone today about this, and that is if the rest of your life was filled with nothingness, and all you had to do was be comfortable on every single given day, you may like that for a day or two, but over time,
awful.
I would argue that the person faced with that life would actually become quite depressed.
Oh, sure.
Because they don't have any fulfillment in their lives.
Right. That makes sense.
I also remember some people follow Michael Hyatt, and I remember I was listening to one of his podcasts a long time ago, and he used to take sabbaticals every summer, and one summer he took a 90-day sabbatical. And so didn't hear from the guy for months, and he came back on his podcast, and they essentially asked him, well, so how'd it go? And he goes, it was the worst decision I've ever made. Worst thing I've ever done in my life. And they're like, why? And he goes, because I didn't do a darn thing. And he said, 2 weeks in, it was awful. He said I had no structure. I did nothing except I would go fishing. And he said he accomplished nothing, and he said I'm never doing it again because there was no fulfillment in that type of existence.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting. But the other thing, so we equate comfort with happiness, but on the flip side, we equate discomfort with danger. We'll go from one extreme to another. So on one extreme, we have, in order to be happy, we have to be comfortable. And the flip side of that is discomfort, therefore, equals danger or something that's unsafe, which simply isn't true. But that's how our bodies react to it. When we get anxious about something, really anxiety or feeling anxious is a fear-based response.
Mm-hmm.
That's typical for our bodies. But the reality is that discomfort is actually a signal of growth. When we're put in an uncomfortable situation that stretches us a little bit, that's where the growth occurs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where goals come in, for example. The last common misconception that I want to touch on was this idea that rest is the same as comfort. A lot of times we equate resting with being comfortable. I would argue that people should kind of change that narrative a little bit and kind of look at the reality is that rest is designed to restore us, whereas comfort kind of numbs us. So rest seeks to restore, whereas comfort seeks to numb us from the reality that we're facing.
Can you be comfortable when you're resting?
I think so. Yeah. I think it's the intent about it, though.
Sure.
You know, to go back to our conversation about the athletes, you know, they plan their rest.
Right.
And it's very intentional because they know if they train every single day, it's actually going to be to their detriment. So rest is designed to restore. Whereas if someone's seeking to be comfortable, that actually numbs them to accomplishing what they want to accomplish in life.
That makes sense.
You know, so I kind of want to, you know, the other way you can kind of look at comfort, this idea of the comfort trap is, you look at an airplane, for example. When we've all traveled, a lot of us have traveled on airplanes before. And some of us, when you travel on airplanes, it's not uncommon to experience turbulence. You know, turbulence is uncomfortable, of course, but it's a normal part of reaching new destinations. You know, so there's always going to be some discomfort associated with going somewhere that we want to in life.
Right.
Just kind of an example. So I've kind of been on a soapbox a little bit, but I kind of want to give some practical takeaways for people to kind of identify, you know, are they in a comfort trap? The first thing I encourage people to do when I work with them is to audit I call it auditing your comfort zones. And so that's just essentially asking yourself, where am I too comfortable? Where have I fallen into that rut of being too comfortable all the time? And then what is it costing me in return? One thing I forgot to add is that video games are a big comfort trap. I'm kind of circling way back around. There's actually the DSM, which is the manual that mental health professionals use for diagnosis, is actually considering a video game addiction as being an actual classifiable disorder for people.
Wow.
But video games can be a comfort trap from the standpoint of they can give this illusion that you're achieving something without really achieving anything at all. It can kind of trigger that feel of enjoyment and satisfaction and goal accomplishment when the reality is all you've done is manipulated a bunch of zeros and ones.
Right. Yeah.
Again, nothing against video games. There's nothing wrong with them. I play them, of course, once in a while. But is it too much? Are you using it to avoid other things that you should be doing?
Right.
The other takeaway that people can do to kind of build their ability to be resilient and to do the hard things is to build micro-discomfort. So you don't need to go from never having gone for a walk to training for an ultra marathon, right?
Right.
Practice small acts of voluntary discomfort. You know, some people like to take cold showers in the morning.
Love them. They're hard.
Do you really?
No, I like the discipline.
Like
I like the discipline that I have to do. I like the anxiety. Honestly, I like the anxiety I have before I step in there.
Yeah.
Before I turn it on.
Yep.
I've learned to like it, I should say.
Another big micro discomfort that is becoming more and more of a discomfort over time is this idea of having conversations with people. You know, so stretching those conversations out over time and being comfortable engaging with somebody that you don't know for an extended period of time without quickly picking up your phone and scrolling to fill that void is important to do as an example of how to build your being comfortable with discomfort.
People should practice having conversations with other people and then just not say anything for like 20 seconds. And just like look at that person in the eye or something and just not say anything and just have that. Then that is the most uncomfortable thing you can probably do.
Most people can't tolerate that.
Can't tolerate it, but it's so good.
Yeah.
To be able to withstand that, you know.
Yep. The other thing I would encourage people to do is to kind of redefine their idea of success. If your idea of success if the end goal of success for you is to be comfortable, I feel that that's very misaligned with what true success really is. So if you see progress, I would encourage people to see progress not as comfort, but as building the capacity to handle the uncomfortable things.
Sure.
Or to handle more uncomfortable things. Again, if the end goal is always just to be comfortable in life, our life is ultimately going to be unfulfilling and we're going to be stuck in that comfort trap. And then finally, I want to end with this because I don't want people to think that I'm anti-rest, I'm anti-leisure. I'm certainly not. But I want to encourage people to rest with intention. So what I mean by that is just to differentiate between restorative rest, which is necessary and vital to our success in life. Differentiate restorative rest and numbing comfort. So, are you resting to rejuvenate yourself, to be better prepared to tackle the difficulties in life? Or are you engaging in those numbing activities that are designed to be an escape rather than an ability to restore yourself?
Is one way to look at it like rest could be looked at almost as a reward, and comfort can be looked at as like an avoidance?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. They
can be the exact same thing.
Right.
It's all how you look at it, and it's all how it's and how you've earned.
Well, and how you've built it into your routines, right. and how you've built it into the structure in life. I think people have this idea of when people, let me say it this way, when people seek comfort, they typically want unstructured time, or they want their lives to be unstructured, in which they can do whatever they want whenever they want.
Right.
And that's most of the time really isn't reality. And
right.
for the people that it is reality for, what we find is that they're typically not very happy because they're not very fulfilled.
Sure. Makes a lot of sense.
All right, so let's bring it back. I want to end with comfort is not the energy, or not the enemy. But when it becomes the goal, that's when it traps us. The more we pursue comfort, the more it controls us. The more we choose growth, the more freedom we find, even in discomfort. Yes, I did read that last sentence.
Super simple, man.
Yep.
It's super simple. I like that.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Non-Static Podcast. If you want to keep the conversation going, sign up for the Non-Static newsletter at nonstatic.org. And if you or someone you care about is struggling with their mental health, you can connect with us anytime at Inspire Services at inspireservicesllc.com. Take care, keep moving forward, and as always, enjoy the journey.